Do you think they're gonna die in that house? I know I'm late with this video, but I was really busy setting stuff up, also working and studying, so there's a lot of things happening. And I really wanted to take my time to marinate on my thoughts about the movie because I have so much of it. Surprise, surprise. I wasn't even planning on making a Wuthering Heights video, but I felt kind of inspired after watching Amanda Todd Hunter's video about the topic, specifically the video about the book. So I went to read Wuthering Heights so I could be well informed when I'm talking about the movie and the book. I'm really not used to reading anything from like around that period, so it took me longer than I would like to, but I did it. Long story short, I quite like the book. I don't like it as much as like other people do, but I'm quite okay with it. But I did not like the movie. Surprise, surprise. But let's get into my thoughts. I won't be recapping the book because there are many videos out there that have already done that, so you can watch those videos. Like Amanda did a really succinct summary in the video that I mentioned before, so you can watch that instead. But I will be recapping the movie because it's something. The movie opens with the controversial opening where there's a public hanging and the man being hung has a stiffy. Some might say he is literally hung. Little Kathy and little Nellie are having a lot of fun at the hanging. They're just, hanging out. And after the hanging, they take off and run through the town where you kind of see how everyone in this town is comically depraved. And then they run through the town and then they run back to Wuthering Heights. In the Heights! We're clued into the financial difficulties of the Earnshaws. However, Mr. Earnshaw, Catherine's father, brought home a nameless boy to be Kathy's pet, adding another mouth to feed, much to the dismay of the servants. Kathy takes a liking to the boy and names him Heathcliff after her dead brother. And since then, they become inseparable, leaving Nellie, Kathy's previous closest companion, alone. Which affects Nellie, but she tries not to let that show. The deal with Nellie is that she is the bastard of a lord, and I think her father paid the people at Wuthering Heights to take her in, and then she's put in the position of a servant, specifically taking care of Catherine, I think. And because of that and her status, she's ostracized by the other servants. That explains why she's quite standoffish and cold sometimes. Anyway, fast forward to the future, and Kathy and Heathcliff's relationship continues to grow alongside the financial issues in Wuthering Heights. Mr. Earnshaw continues to drink and gamble and abuse both Heathcliff and Catherine. Meanwhile, Edgar Linton and his ward Isabella moves into the neighboring house called, it's so hard to pronounce this for me, Thrushcross Grange. Did I do okay? Anyway, they move in and Kathy is interested in their wealth. She kind of muses aloud to Heathcliff being like, oh, I sort of wish Edgar would take me in and make me his wife, like help out with the whole financial situation and stuff. And Heathcliff is obviously not happy about this because he likes Catherine. And Catherine, the thing is, also likes Heathcliff, but she also wants money and status. Which one wins? One day, Catherine decides to climb over the walls of the Grange so she can spy on Edgar and Isabella, but she falls and sprains her ankles, and the Lintons found her, and they're like, stay at the Grange, we can take care of you so you can heal. And so Catherine stays at the Grange for about 6 weeks. While Catherine is in the Grange, the Lintons treat her really well, and then she gets a taste of the wealth, and Catherine likes it. When Catherine returns to the Heights, Heathcliff is mad, and Kathy becomes mad that Heathcliff is mad. A little bit of a lover's quarrel. Anyway, that night, Kathy wants to talk to Heathcliff, so she goes to his room, but then she overhears and sees her servants kind of getting it on 50 Shades of Grey style. It's very intriguing for her. She's never seen anything like this. She wants to peep. I need to explain this part because it's important to the narrative of the movie, okay? When Kathy is spying on the servants, she's on the floor because she's on the top floor. The room she's in, Heathcliff's room is on the top floor, and then the servants are downstairs, and then she's on the floor, and the floor is wooden, so there are cracks, and so she's spying on them by looking through the gaps of the floor. Does that make sense? Anyway, she's on the floor, looking at them, right? Like the creep she is. She looks down and she's watching them. And then Heathcliff suddenly drapes over her and covers her eyes and her mouth. I think she's kind of into it. I think she is. I think she's into it. After the whole thing, Kathy is embarrassed, so she runs out. The next morning, Catherine is still a little bit ooh. around Heathcliff. So she goes to the cliff for a little bit of privacy, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, Heathcliff is also looking for Kathy, and he hears her and sees her, and then he steps on a branch, and Kathy is like, oh, Kathy is, of course, is very embarrassed, but Heathcliff is like, oh, no, it's fine. I'm into you. I'm into this, you know. And then he sucks on the finger that she uses to do things with. And she's like, oh. But then she pulls back and she's like, no, I can do this. I can't. And then she runs away. She runs back to the heights where Linton is there to propose. Kathy accepts the proposal, but later she confides in Nellie about like not feeling good about accepting the proposal because she's in love with Heathcliff, right? However, Kathy has a plan. So like she'll marry Edgar Linton, but then she'll use Edgar's money to help Heathcliff rise through the ranks because he's like a lowly servant and stuff. And Nellie is rightfully like, oh, so you're gonna use your husband's money to help who is supposed to be your like soulmate. Girl, I don't think that's appropriate. That's a little bit weird, don't you think? Kathy was like, no, you don't understand, Nellie. You never love anyone. You've never been loved by anyone. So Nellie couldn't understand the position Kathy is in. And Nellie, hearing that, like she decides to choose war. And you know what? I'm on Nellie's side. Like that is so rude of Kathy. So Nellie sees Heathcliff kind of like walking by, right? And she asked Kathy, so girl, repeat again what you said to me about marrying Heathcliff. And Kathy's like, it would degrade me to marry Heathcliff. Heathcliff overhears that and then angry, and he runs away on his horse into the sunset. I wish the movie ended around here, but it didn't. It continued. Oh my god. Without Heathcliff around, Kathy marries Edgar Linton and starts her new lavish life in the Grange, even if she's not happy. 5 years later, Kathy is pregnant with Linton's child. And at the same time, Heathcliff returns, rich and clean-shaven, like he cuts his hair, he trims his beard, he has a hoop earring now, he has a gold tooth, and to also indicate that he's rich, he bought the heights. Kathy is very excited about Heathcliff's return, of course. And Kathy is not the only one excited because Isabella starts to develop a crush on Heathcliff. Kathy hates this and she mocks Isabella, and she said something along the lines of like, girl, he's too much for you. You'll fumble him. You can't take him. For the most part, before this, Kathy and Isabella's relationship has been like weird, but it's been pretty good. And then that point changed everything. Since then, their relationship has become quite bad and quite like villainous towards each other. On the other side of things, Mr. Earnshaw dies, and Kathy visits the Heights to say goodbye and see her dad and those kinds of things. She meets Heathcliff there because he lives there. They comfort each other because he's kind of like their father in a way. But yeah, they comfort each other and then they start kissing. So begins the affair. And we are shown this affair through a montage of them banging, set against Charli XCX. The song, not the person. After banging one time, they were talking and Kathy finds out from Heathcliff that Nellie saw Heathcliff when Kathy was like ranting about how marrying Heathcliff will degrade her and stuff. And Kathy is like, oh, so that woman is the one who sabotaged our relationship. As a result, she tries to fire Nellie. And as we established, Nellie is also very messy and very petty. So in retaliation, she goes to Edgar and tells him about the affair. And Edgar is like, I'm not firing Nellie, but Kathy, don't see Heathcliff anymore. You are pregnant with my child. And you know what? Perfectly valid of him to request of that of her. Kathy tries to break off the affair, but she can't because he starts pulling the move on her. And then like as they're like kind of getting it on, Heathcliff is like, let me kill Edgar for you. I actually don't mind raising a child that's not my own. I can be the father that steps up. But hearing that, I guess Kathy draws the line at murder. Anyway, she breaks off the affair. In an effort to make Kathy jealous, Heathcliff pursues Isabella. They get married and Heathcliff and Isabella collude together. So their plan is Isabella will write letters to Kathy on behalf of Heathcliff because he can't write, and Heathcliff in return will do like whatever Isabella wants. At some point they do this like dog master roleplay thing where Isabella is the dog. In the beginning the letters were spiteful, but Nellie, I think she's the one who goes through the letters, the person who determines like which letters go to who. Anyway, Nellie didn't give the letters to Catherine. Heathcliff never gets an answer and Heathcliff thought that Kathy ghosted him. So the letters start becoming less spiteful and it eventually reaches a point where it's like, let's call a truce at this rate. I can't take it anymore. Kathy being really torn and depressed, thinking that Heathcliff ghosted her because she doesn't receive the letters from Nellie. Anyway, she is very torn and depressed, so she locks herself in her room. She's not really eating, she's not really, you know, getting any proper care, and that's not good because she's pregnant, right? But anytime Kathy is like, "Oh, I'm not feeling well, you know, something's happening," Nellie waves it off because Nellie thinks that Catherine was being dramatic. Nellie dismisses all of Kathy's concerns, but Kathy's condition is actually like really bad and she's dying. I think it reached a point of no return where at this rate, even if they called the doctors, Catherine wouldn't heal. On her deathbed, Kathy forgives Nellie for the whole thing with Heathcliff, and then Catherine dies. Nellie goes to the Heights to pick up Isabella and tell Heathcliff about the news. And then so Heathcliff rushes to Catherine and cries over her dead body. Let's talk about the most glaring thing about the movie immediately, just to get it out of the way. One of the biggest criticisms about this movie is the fact that Jacob Elordi is cast as Heathcliff, which is a problem because Heathcliff in the novel is coded a lot to be a person of color. It's ambiguous what race Heathcliff truly is, but he is definitely a person of color, with a lot of popular interpretations being that he is a brown man or of Romani descent specifically. Previous Heathcliffs in other adaptations have been white as well, but those adaptations are made in the past, so I feel like things are a little bit different than it is now, especially now with how a lot of people are trying to push like diversity. I think it's just a little bit disappointing to see a character of color not actually be a character of color. To be honest, when I heard about the casting of Jacob Elordi, I wasn't particularly surprised it happened. It's sort of weird because I'm like desensitized almost, which is even sadder. But having roles taken away from people of color, even if the character is supposed to be a character of color, I don't know, it's just become so normalized in these casting processes that I was just like, what else did I expect? In my video essay about race bending, I talked about how this is a systematic thing, right? Even if these roles were intended for people of color, it still doesn't guarantee that people of color would be cast in the role. For example, despite campaigning hard for the role, Anna May Wong was not cast in The Good Earth as the main character of Olan, who is a Chinese woman, and instead a white woman was cast in this role. And it's just sad, right? Like, the character is Chinese, so that puts Anna May Wong at a prime position to take the role, right? But the race still doesn't guarantee her the role. And she's not even in contention for the role because they already cast the other main character, who is also supposed to be Chinese, with a white man. And because with the Hays Code, you're not allowed to show interracial couples, so by default, Anna May Wong cannot even be considered for this role. So just because a character is a person of color, it still doesn't guarantee that a person of color could still get access to these roles. One of the most common justification of whitewashing is that sometimes it's hard to find an actor of color with that kind of talent. That's a bit silly to say in this day and age where you can send self-tapes from all over the world through the internet. Most auditions now are done digitally. Another justification that they often use is that they just don't have the resources to bring that kind of talent, because what if we have to bring them from overseas? But I don't even think that this movie is allowed to use those reasons because A, it's backed by Warner Brothers, which is one of the biggest movie studios in the world, so they do have the resources, and B, in the movie, they have Shazad Latif, a brown man, playing Edgar Linton. The casting of Shazad Latif proves that not only do they have the capability of finding a brown man, but they also have the capability of casting him in the movie, but they just refuse to have him as Heathcliff. Some people say that Jacob Elordi was cast as Heathcliff because he's like a bigger name and he's more recognizable, but I doubt for like the regular person, like if I were to go to my mom and ask her like, do you know this guy? I don't think she will know who Jacob Elordi is. I feel only a select number of people would know who he is, and most of those people would be people who are chronically online. But the thing is, there are also actors of color who has a more recognizable name than Jacob Elordi. Like, for example, off the top of my head, John Boyega, he already has name recognition from being in the Star Wars movie, so you can have him as Heathcliff too. I also feel, to be honest, Margot Robbie is already a big draw as a name herself. Like, she starred in and produced one of the biggest movies of 2020s. So I genuinely think they could have had Margot as Catherine and Shazad as Heathcliff. For myself, right, the casting of Shazad Latif just draws more attention to the controversy because, again, they can find and cast a brown man, just not as the main role. And I can't help but feel that this casting is like this consolation prize, like, hey, we're not racist, like we can have a brown man in this movie. But I also feel that their hearts are not really in it when they cast Shazad as Edgar Linton, because for Isabella, they have Alison Oliver, who is white. And the thing is, in the book, Isabella is Edgar's sister, but in the movie, they explain that Isabella is Edgar's ward, but he practically treats her as a sister. And this is something that they actually said out loud in the movie. Why can't you just make Isabella Edgar's sister? I don't know if it's weird or not. It's like they're going through hoops to explain that Isabella is a white woman, when I just feel like have a brown woman playing Isabella. You get what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the intention is also to have a white Edgar Linton, but then they saw the controversy and they're like, okay, so maybe we should have a brown Edgar Linton just as a consolation prize so people wouldn't think that we're racist. The more that I think about it, the angrier I get, because the casting of the people of color in this movie just feels like an attempt to be like, oh, look, we're actually inclusive. We have people of color. We have colorblind casting here. But the thing is as well, like, the people of color in this movie can only be side characters in a story where in the original source material, the main character is a person of color. It doesn't help as well that the characters of color in this movie were portrayed as the people who are most often in the way of the two leads being able to get together. Just look at how Nellie, played by Hong Chau, being the biggest reason why Catherine and Heathcliff's relationship is sabotaged, and then Edgar Linton is also the man that Catherine marries, and so as a result, because Catherine is married, she can't be together with Heathcliff. And then there's also this thing as well with him being the father of Catherine's child. Anyway, it's another thing as well if Jacob Elordi did a really amazing job with the role. I'm not saying that the whitewashing would be fine if he did an amazing job, but it would have at least given a bit of context about why he was even cast in the role. But he was passable. He didn't do anything that makes me go like, oh, okay, so that's why he was cast, because he did such a great job acting this particular moment. No, I didn't feel anything like that. I only feel like he's cast because he's tall and big. And the thing is, there are plenty of people of color who are as tall as Jacob Elordi. For example, Tyrek Withers is also 6'5", like Jacob Elordi. He might be too young or young looking for the role, but like, you get what I mean. Like, it's not that hard to find a tall person of color. Or I don't know, do forced perspectives like the way they do it with the hobbits in the Lord of the Rings movies. Shazad Latif is also 6'1", and that's like around 185 centimeters tall, and that's like still tall in comparison to Margot Robbie, so he could still be Heathcliff. I'm just saying, like literally, you have this man right here and you didn't make him Heathcliff. Jacob Elordi's chemistry with Margot Robbie is also fine. We'll talk a little bit more later about why this is a problem for me, but the fact that the chemistry is not, like, it's not sizzling, it's not killer, it makes me go again, like, so why must Jacob Elordi be Heathcliff? I know Emerald Fennell said that the reason she cast him is because he looks like the illustration of Heathcliff on her Wuthering Heights book, but Emerald, I'm sorry, is the picture in color? Is it black and white? Are you sure he's supposed to be white in the picture? Is this like a Jesus thing where we know that he is a man of color but he keeps being drawn as a white man? Are you sure you didn't cast Jacob Elordi because you think he's hot? In terms of the quality of the movie, it has both good and bad parts. The good part has a lot to do with the fact that the movie is like aesthetically pleasing to look at. I think a lot of people already pointed that out. But the movie does have an aesthetic identity that I wish they would lean more into. As an adaptation of Wuthering Heights, this movie is bad. Point blank. It's just bad. It completely misses the point and the themes of the book, and a lot of people have discussed this at length, so I encourage you to watch those videos instead, because some of them actually have English literature degrees, so they're worth listening to more. And I do want to consider the merits of the movie as its own thing. I'm a fan of Marvel, but I do have to acknowledge that the MCU movies often take liberties from the source materials. The movies are not like one-to-one adaptations of the comics because like there's 100 years worth of canon, so it's like impossible to condense them into like 1 or 2 or 3 movies. I would say Marvel does try its best to retain what the character represents, but some writers have been given more liberty in creating almost a completely different character. One of my favorite characters from the MCU is actually Star-Lord, but he is very different from the comics. The only difference is I feel like MCU Star-Lord is a character because he is consistent and he has a thesis behind why he is the way that he is and why he operates in that particular way. I can see what James Gunn is trying to do with the character, but the key word that I want to emphasize here is that the intention with the character is consistent. The way he is being portrayed is consistent. The writing, it's all over the place, but if it's written by James Gunn, it's quite consistent. That is to say, it is a shame that this adaptation of Wuthering Heights completely misses the mark of what is a harrowing story about the cycles of abuse, but I would have probably forgive that a little bit more if the movie were consistent. Like if it's trying to do its own thing and it's consistent on what it's trying to do. Let me explain, because I feel like I'm being way too abstract about this. I feel like this movie just doesn't doesn't want to commit. It wants to be freaky, but it doesn't commit to the freakiness. It wants to be a tragedy, but there are also moments where it's way too campy to be a tragedy. It also wants to portray the characters as toxic, but it doesn't want to fully embrace the character's toxicity. When I saw the opening sequence, particularly the part where Lil Kathy and Lil Nelly were running to the heights, and the whole thing is set against "I'm gonna die in this house," and then there were like hair all over, you know, the screen, and it becomes the title card. Like I was kind of into it. I was like, oh, okay, sure, because the aesthetic paired with the soundtrack from Charli XCX, like it oddly worked for me. It was anachronistic, but it was also unhinged. But the movie doesn't carry the unhingedness throughout the whole thing. Gradually, the movie loses its footing and struggles the rest of the runtime. At its core, Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights is a story about a couple who cannot be together, right? So they make it into everyone's problem. I think that's probably also true of the original book. The difference is with Emerald Fennell's version, Kathy and Heathcliff, as portrayed by Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi, they both have the vibe of like this popular couple in high school who has to break up, and then they make it like everyone's problem. Everyone has to suffer alongside them because they cannot be together. It gives like high school vibes. But the movie does not have the self-awareness that the characters are acting like high school kids and that they are both toxic, and that's where the problem lies. In the books, the romance between Heathcliff and Kathy is toxic and codependent, and it is portrayed as such. It never romanticizes their relationship, but in this movie, it romanticizes this relationship. And it's confusing because this movie does show that this romance is toxic at times. However, the movie also romanticizes this relationship. Like it's aspirational to have someone love you so much that it consumes them, that they become obsessive and possessive over you. That's where I'm like confused, right? Because I would be more on board if they were to commit to the toxicity of these characters, these two people, and portray it as something that is not aspirational. They're both really unhinged and insane and crazy. Let's let them both be together so they can be crazy together and leave all the normal people alone. I want that vibe, but sadly this movie does not give me that vibe. I hope that makes sense. And that's the thing. That's where I feel I do not find the consistency. It's like, Miss Ma'am, Miss Emerald Fennell, do you think they're toxic or not? What do you think? And this is not me being like, oh, this movie needs to have this fidelity to the book. I think I can enjoy things separately from their source material. I can appreciate them on its own, and I will prove it to you. Charli XCX's Wuthering Heights soundtrack that comes with this movie, right? I actually think it's good. I enjoy it, and I will say it because it's consistent. In the making of this soundtrack, this concept album, Charli talked about how she wants it to feel brutal and elegant, and she executes that vision. The soundtrack is indeed brutal but elegant. It's shown through the use of both orchestra and harsh industrial sounds. It's also portrayed in the lyrics. The song can sound sweet and girly pop, but then the lyrics are like, all the pain and torture I went through all makes sense to me now. I was dying for you. Pain and torture? Dying? This album is inspired by Wuthering Heights, but I wouldn't say it captures the depth of the novel, but I still enjoy it because it's consistent. Another thing that I want to point out is, for a movie where the romance is the core of it all, I don't think the chemistry between Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi was strong enough. They can act together, and individually the performances are sufficient. I think Margot Robbie probably did a better job, but I don't feel that pull to ship them together. That's the problem. It's a romance movie. You're supposed to ship them. This is more of a problem in Hollywood, where they have the tendency to just cast two people who are attractive, and then they just hope the audience will be like, yeah, they're both attractive, so I want them to be together. But it's like, no, the chemistry is also important. I just don't think that they do like chemistry reads that often anymore, which is a problem. Like, bring back chemistry reads, because without these chemistry reads, these couples don't have chemistry, and you end up with a tepid romance like Wuthering Heights. I think I'm just spoiled with heated rivalry where the two leads have like this really strong chemistry with each other. But the reason they have strong chemistry is because they did all these chemistry reads with different pairs to see which pairing would work, and then they cast whoever has the best chemistry. And because the chemistry between these two characters are so good, you root for this pairing. Let's be real for a second, right? The show's plot, the book's plot, it's kind of meh. Like, it's kind of like, it's standard. There's nothing special about it. But what works for me me, personally, is the fact that the two leads have chemistry, and because this is a romance and the relationship is the core of everything, the show works for me because I'm rooting for the couple. I'm shipping the couple. Wuthering Heights hinges on the romance, but I don't buy into the romance, so that's why I just cannot get into the movie, I think. You can have them bang as much as we want, but if the chemistry is not there, like, why are we banging? Bang with intention. The biggest question that I had when I was watching this movie more than anything is, why does it have to be called Wuthering Heights? Why? Why is the title Wuthering Heights? As I mentioned before, movie adaptations often take liberties from the source materials. However, I always feel, at least, they try to keep the concept or idea of the source materials. Jurassic Park, the movie, is very different from Jurassic Park, the novel, but the idea is still more or less the same. Both of them are still stories about dinosaur parks. With the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, it's very different from the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics, but the idea is still more or less the same. It's a story about these beings with shady pasts coming together to make something of themselves, and along the way they find friendship and family. With Emerald Fennell's Wuthering Heights, I feel the stuff that she extrapolated from the novel and put into her movie are not stuff that are exclusive to Wuthering Heights. The stuff that she took from the novels are pretty common romance tropes: friends to lovers, toxic, possessive, and obsessive dynamic, forbidden romance, rich girl, poor boy. Like, it's not an exclusive thing that happens in Wuthering Heights. So why does it have to be called Wuthering Heights? With Saltburn, another one of Emerald Fennell's project, a lot of people pointed out that it's very similar to The Talented Mr. Ripley. Emerald Fennell denies that she was inspired by Mr. Ripley for Saltburn, but it's eerily similar. But you know what? It still has allusions to like other movies that inspired her to make Saltburn. But Saltburn itself is an original story. What I'm saying here is that I feel like Emerald Fennell could have just made an original movie that has allusions to Wuthering Heights, the same way that she made Saltburn and it has allusions to these other movies that inspired it. A lot of people came to the defense of calling this movie Wuthering Heights, saying that it's supposed to be a distillation of the emotions that Emerald Fennell felt when she was reading the book at the age of 14. To which I say there could be something interesting there. Like, it's not made clear that this movie is supposed to be the feelings of a 14-year-old. So to fix that, why can't we have like a framing device of a young 14-year-old girl reading the book, sort of like how the Lego movie have that framing device with the son and the father playing Lego. And then as this girl is reading Wuthering Heights, she can misinterpret the themes and the romance. And then it's not until she's older that she realizes what the book's like truly about. There could be an interesting commentary about how young people, especially young women, are often exposed to romance that is problematic but is romanticized by the media. But I acknowledge that that movie is probably not the movie that Emerald Fennell wants to make. At the end of the day, maybe Emerald Fennell just wants to make a smutty romance about a toxic couple, and Heathcliff and Cathy so happen to be the toxic couple. The couple doesn't even have to be Heathcliff and Cathy, you know? Like, why not just make an original movie? Make an original bodice ripper movie, because this movie is practically a bodice ripper in the first place. I know they probably want the headline of like, oh, Wuthering Heights, but not the kind that your English teacher and parents and grandparents read. But I also feel like making a bodice ripper movie can still be a headline on its own, considering how aghast some people still get from this genre. You're reading Bodice Ripper? And in an age where we don't have a lot of original movies, I sort of wish Lucky Chap, Margot Robbie's production company that produced this movie, and Emerald Fennell would try to make an original movie in general. I know some people have problems with Emerald Fennell, but regardless of that, she does have accolades from doing Promising Young Women. And Lucky Chap also has the track record of making box office hits with Barbie. They could have both been in a position to make an original movie, because you have this woman who is acknowledged already in her work of writing and directing, and then you have this production company that produced like a good movie that made millions, billions of dollars. I feel like they could have worked together to create an original movie, because God knows we need more original movies in the theaters. And by making this an original movie, they probably would have a bit more freedom to lean to whatever movie that they want to make. Alas, they didn't seize the chance. Maybe, just maybe, they want the prestige of adapting a literary classic, even though I do not recognize this literary classic in this movie. Unfortunately, this movie is the perfect example of what Hollywood represents at the moment. Brand recognition is favored compared to original ideas, and people of color still have difficulties accessing Hollywood despite the system insisting that it's becoming more accepting and more diverse. Anyway, what do you guys think? I've been talking for a really long time and I'm really sorry, but talk to me, guys. Did you watch Wuthering Heights? Or have you read the book? I would love to know your thoughts, especially if you've watched the movie and also read the book. Be kind in the comments. I'm very sensitive, that's the thing. And let me know too if you agree with me, or if you think I'm being harsh, or if you think I am talking out of my butt about this whole thing. But nonetheless, if you made it to this point, thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoy it, please like it, comment, and share it. Overall, please engage with it. Consider subscribing to the channel too. I got some fun stuff coming up, so maybe you would want to be notified when these things come up. Just saying. Also, do you like this new microphone holder that I got? And it's pink. It's very Glinda of me. Who does know? Anyway, I also put on like blush. I think I put on too much. I'm sorry if I look a little bit like boiled crab right now. But in the movie, technically they have so many blush. They look so rosy there. But I just look like cooked crab right now. Oh my god, I'm losing my voice. I've been talking so long. Have a good day, dusk, dawn, evening, night, whatever time you're watching this. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye. Thank you. Bye.